There's a quiet moment that happens to anyone chasing something that matters. It's not loud and it's not dramatic. It usually happens when no one's watching. Maybe it's early in the morning before the sun comes up. Maybe it's late at night when everyone else has already gone to bed. It's that moment where you feel the weight of exhaustion, uncertainty, even fear, but something inside of you whispers, keep going. That voice, that's not adrenaline. That's not pressure. That's purpose. See, successful people aren't the ones who work the most hours. They're not the ones checking off tasks like a machine. They're the ones who work with a different kind of fuel. They're not driven by a clock. They're driven by a cause. We've all met people who live by the calendar. You can feel it when they talk. Everything is about deadlines, checklists, performance metrics. There's nothing wrong with those things. They help us stay accountable, but they can't be the only thing we live by, because what happens when the meeting ends? What happens when the quarter is over? If all your motivation came from the outside, it leaves when the external pressure does. That's why people burn out. That's why people who seem productive are often unfulfilled. But there's another kind of person, the kind who wakes up thinking about impact, the kind who doesn't count hours, they count change. These people often don't have to be told to show up early or stay late. They don't look at their work as just a job. For them, it's a mission. And the crazy thing is, they don't need applause or even recognition. Their satisfaction comes from doing something they believe matters. And that belief, that's the seed of success. Purpose is a strange thing. It doesn't shout. It tugs. It whispers. It nudges you when you're about to quit. It gently pulls you back when your ego tries to lead. It humbles you when you're praised and strengthens you when you're ignored. And when you live with purpose, your work becomes more than work. It becomes a reflection of who you are. Think about the people who've changed the world, big or small. The teacher who shows up every day to teach kids in an underserved community. The founder who built a company not to sell it, but to solve a problem. The nurse who holds the hand of a scared patient, even though it's not in the job description. These people aren't waiting for the clock to strike 5. They're not motivated by a paycheck alone. Their work is a calling. And that's what gives them energy when everyone else is tired. And let's be honest, it's easy to be excited at the beginning. Everyone has energy on day 1. Starting is romantic. There's momentum, there's adrenaline. But what happens on day 100 or day 1000 when the novelty wears off and the grind sets in? That's when you find out what you're really made of. That's when cause beats clock. Because if you're only working for the weekend, you'll never build something that lasts. If your only reward is your salary, you'll always feel underpaid. But if you believe in the change you're creating, if you're connected to something bigger than yourself, the work becomes the reward. There's a question I love to ask people. What would you still do even if you failed? That's the real test. If the outcome didn't go your way, would you still say it was worth it? If the answer is yes, then you're on the right path. Because successful people aren't obsessed with the finish line, they're in love with the process. They care deeply about how they show up, not just what they get. And this isn't about martyrdom. It's not about overworking or sacrificing your well-being. It's about alignment. It's about waking up with clarity, knowing that your effort means something. When you're aligned with your cause, energy comes more naturally, decision-making becomes easier, resilience becomes stronger. You start to notice that your life feels less like survival and more like contribution. Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't chase boats, it stands still and shines. That's what purpose does. It doesn't frantically try to impress, it doesn't need constant feedback. It just radiates something constant and clear. That's how people find you. When your reason is real, you don't have to be loud, you just have to be consistent. You know you'll be successful when you stop asking, what do I get if I do this? And start asking, who will this help if I don't stop? That shift from self to service is where the deepest kind of success begins. And ironically, the people who are most driven by a cause often become the ones others call successful. Not because they chased success, but because they chased meaning, and success became a byproduct of that meaning. So if you're wondering whether you're on the right track, don't look at your schedule, look at your heart. Are you doing this because you believe in it? Does it light you up when no one's watching? Would you still care if it didn't come with a title or a trophy? If the answer is yes, then trust me, you're already succeeding, because people like you, the ones driven by a cause, not a clock, are the ones who leave something behind that outlives them. There's something incredibly powerful about people who are willing to begin before they're ready, who step into the unknown with more belief than certainty. The truth is, if you're waiting for perfect conditions, for the perfect plan, for the perfect version of yourself before you take action, you'll be waiting forever. The people who go on to succeed aren't the ones who waited until everything made sense. They're the ones who were brave enough to begin when it didn't. Perfection is a seductive lie. It whispers, just a little more planning, just a little more tweaking, just one more revision, and then you'll be ready. But that day never comes. Because perfection isn't a destination, it's a delay tactic. The people who spend their lives chasing perfection often look busy, but they rarely move forward. They prepare and polish and perfect so much so that they forget to actually do. But the ones who thrive, who grow, who lead, they don't chase perfection, they chase progress. They're less concerned with being flawless and more focused on being in motion. They understand that action is the best teacher, that you learn faster when you move forward, not when you stand still. You see, clarity doesn't come from sitting and thinking. It comes from doing, from trying, from failing, adjusting, and trying again. It comes from walking into the arena, not waiting outside, hoping to be handed a guaranteed win. The irony is, the people who look the most polished today usually started in the messiest way possible. They didn't know all the answers. They didn't have everything figured out, but they started anyway. There's a story I heard once about a young artist who asked a mentor how to find their voice. The mentor smiled and said, make 100 bad paintings. The lesson wasn't about mediocrity, it was about momentum. That in the act of doing, we become. That progress is born from repetition, from iteration, from the willingness to be imperfect. Successful people are not afraid to look unfinished. They're not paralyzed by what others might think because they're not performing, they're learning. And when you're learning, failure isn't fatal, it's feedback. They understand that every misstep brings them closer to mastery, and they treat mistakes like stepping stones instead of roadblocks. And the truth is, people don't connect with perfection, they connect with honesty. Vulnerability, the realness of someone who's in it, who's figuring it out as they go, but doing so with courage and heart. That's who we trust. That's who we follow. Not the one who claims to have it all together, but the one who dares to grow in public. Progress over perfection means choosing movement over image. It means showing up even when you're unsure. It means creating, building, sharing, even when the voice in your head tells you you're not ready. It means making peace with the version of you that is still learning. Think about babies when they learn to walk. They don't study biomechanics. They don't wait for the right footwear. They just try. They wobble, they fall, they laugh, they cry, but they always get back up. And no one criticizes a baby for falling. We cheer them on. We say, you've got this, keep going. Somewhere along the way, though, we stop being so kind to ourselves. We start believing we're only worthy when we get it right the first time. But success doesn't demand perfection, it demands persistence. What's really beautiful about this mindset is that it frees you. It takes the pressure off. Because if your goal is growth, then every experience, even the hard ones, has value. The rejection, the missteps, the detours. They all become part of your education, and suddenly you realize you don't have to impress anyone, you just have to keep moving forward. And that's where confidence is born, not from pretending to be perfect, but from proving to yourself that you can improve, that you can handle discomfort, that you can try, fall, and rise again. Every time you choose progress over perfection, you send yourself a message. I am becoming, I am learning, I am moving. One of the most dangerous beliefs is that success is reserved for the most talented. It's not. Success belongs to the most willing to try, willing to fail, willing to grow. When you realize that, everything shifts. You stop comparing yourself to people who seem further ahead. You stop waiting for permission. You begin to understand that progress is your job. Perfection isn't. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more brave ones. More honest ones, more people who are willing to show up as they are and keep becoming who they're meant to be. And when you live like that, when you choose progress again and again, You start to become unstoppable, not because everything goes your way, but because nothing can stop your forward motion. This isn't about settling. It's not about doing things halfway. It's about trusting that your best work comes through the process, not before it. That you can't get to great without going through good, and good without going through not quite there yet. You have to be willing to be in the middle, to live in the tension between where you are and where you want to be. And the best part, you start to enjoy the journey. You stop waiting for a finish line to feel proud. You start finding meaning in the small wins, the daily choices, the moments of progress. And that's when success becomes sustainable, because it's no longer tied to external validation. It's tied to your internal growth. So if you find yourself holding back, waiting for the perfect idea, the perfect timing, the perfect version of yourself, don't. Begin. Begin before you're ready. Start before you know how it will end. Take the first imperfect step. Because every step forward is a declaration that you are committed to becoming, not pretending, that you are here to grow, not to impress, that you are building something real. And that, more than anything, is how you know you're on the path to success. Because those who choose progress over perfection, who move with humility and intention, who are willing to be unfinished in pursuit of something greater, they are the ones who rise. They are the ones who lead. They are the ones who succeed. There's a reason the most successful people often speak about the people they surrounded themselves with, not their skills, not their resumes, but their circle. Because success isn't a solo sport. It's never been about going it alone. It's about who's walking with you, who's challenging you, and who's willing to tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. If you really want to know whether you'll be successful, don't just look in the mirror. Look around the table. Look at the people who speak into your life. Look at the ones you let challenge your thinking, question your decisions, push your limits. Because comfort is nice, but it doesn't grow you. Praise feels good, but it doesn't stretch you. It's the people who make you uncomfortable in the right ways who often shape your future. We tend to gravitate toward people who affirm us, people who agree with us, people who validate what we already believe. That feels safe. But safety isn't where growth happens. Growth lives in tension. It lives in challenge. It lives in honest conversations with people who care more about your progress than your pride. These are the people who love you enough to risk your reaction, who will tell you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. The irony is we think we want agreement, but we grow most from disagreement. When it's rooted in trust, a good challenger doesn't attack your character. They confront your assumptions. They ask questions that make you pause. They hold up a mirror, not to criticize you, but to help you see what you might be missing. And they don't do it to feel superior. They do it because they believe in who you could become. You see, feedback from someone who wants to see you win is one of the most powerful tools in your life. Not because it flatters you, but because it sharpens you. Steel sharpens steel, not silk. And those hard conversations, the ones that sting a little, are often the ones that change everything. They wake you up, they break your routine, they force you to grow beyond the version of yourself you've become comfortable with. Success rarely happens in echo chambers. It happens in environments of accountability, of friction, of people asking you, is that really your best? Or why are you playing small? Or even better, why are you still doing it that way? These are the moments that cause breakthroughs, not because they give you answers, but because they force you to ask better questions. And let's be clear, this isn't about surrounding yourself with critics. There's a big difference between someone who challenges you and someone who tears you down. One calls you higher, the other tries to pull you under. The key is in the intention. Are they pushing you because they see your potential, or are they criticizing you because they feel threatened by it? That's why trust matters. You can only be vulnerable in a space where you feel safe, but safety doesn't mean silence. It means honesty without hostility. It means people who can say hard things to you with love, who believe in the vision you have, even when you start to doubt it yourself. And sometimes they believe in you more than you do. Think about a time in your life when someone challenged you and it changed you. Maybe it was a coach who told you, you've got more in the tank. Maybe it was a friend who asked, are you being true to yourself? Maybe it was a mentor who said, stop waiting, go. Those moments, those people, They didn't come into your life to keep you comfortable. They came to help you rise. The people around you are either reinforcing your excuses or reinforcing your excellence. One will keep you stuck, the other will set you free. So the real question is, who has permission to challenge you? Who can call you out when you're playing it safe? Who can say, that's not you? And have you actually listened? If the answer is no one, then you're not leading yourself well yet. Because leadership, whether it's of others or of yourself, requires humility. It requires being open to refinement, to feedback, to correction, and not just from people above you. Sometimes the person who challenges you most is beside you or even behind you. Great leaders, successful people, they seek this out. They don't wait to be corrected, they invite it. They say, tell me what I'm not seeing. They value being better more than being right. And because of that, they grow faster, they adapt better, they lead deeper. Because they're not afraid of challenge, they're fueled by it. There's a phrase I heard once, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's not just about behavior, it's about mindset, about energy, about belief systems. If you're constantly around people who settle, you'll start to shrink. If you're around people who stretch themselves, who take risks, who chase purpose, you'll start to expand. So take inventory. Who are you talking to every day? Who are you learning from? Who are you letting influence your standards? Because standards are contagious. If everyone around you is satisfied with average, you'll start thinking excellence is extreme. But if you're around people who push limits, suddenly that becomes your normal. And when you do find those people, the ones who challenge you, who inspire you, who won't let you settle, hold on to them. Invite their feedback. Ask them what they see in you that you might not see yet. Let them speak into your blind spots. Because success doesn't come from pretending you have it all figured out. It comes from being surrounded by people who help you figure it out better. In the end, the path to success isn't just about how hard you work. It's about how much you're willing to grow, and that growth is accelerated or limited by who you allow in your life. If you surround yourself with comfort, you'll stay where you are. But if you surround yourself with challenge, the right kind, you'll go further than you imagine. So if you want to know whether you'll be successful, ask yourself this: who's in my corner, and are they strong enough to push me forward? Because no one climbs alone. And those who rise highest are always standing on the shoulders of those who help them see what they could become. One of the most powerful signs that someone is on the path to real success isn't in how much they know, it's in how deeply they listen. Not just hearing, but listening. There's a difference. Hearing is passive, it's about sound. But listening is active. It's about presence. It's about caring enough to slow down and fully receive someone, not just their words, but their emotions, their values, their perspective. We live in a world where everyone's speaking, everyone's publishing, everyone's posting, but very few are truly listening. And yet the people who rise, the ones who lead, the ones who make a lasting difference, they're the ones who know how to tune in. They understand that success is not just about expressing yourself, it's about connecting. And real connection only happens when someone feels heard. Listening is one of the most underrated skills of high-impact people. It doesn't show up on a resume, it's not easy to measure. But it's the difference between manipulation and influence, between authority and leadership, between a transaction and a relationship. Because when someone listens to you, truly listens, you feel seen, you feel valued. And when people feel valued, they give more, they believe more, they trust more. Successful people are curious. They don't walk into a room assuming they have all the answers. They walk in with questions, not just to gather facts, but to understand. Because understanding people is the foundation of leadership, of service, of innovation. And you can't understand what you don't listen to. When you sit with someone and you're not thinking about your response, when you're not multitasking in your mind, waiting for your turn to speak, you create a space where truth emerges. People say things they didn't even know they were feeling. Insights come out that weren't planned. That only happens when someone feels safe. And listening is what creates that safety. There's something almost sacred about being in the presence of a great listener. You can feel it. They're not checking their phone. They're not rushing you. They're not trying to fix you. They're just there, fully there. They hold silence without discomfort. They nod. They ask more. They make space. And somehow you walk away feeling lighter, clearer, more alive. That's not an accident. That's the power of presence. And it's not just about one-on-one conversations, it's about how you listen to your team, your customers, your market, your intuition. Some of the best business moves didn't come from bold ideas, they came from quietly listening to unmet needs. Some of the best relationships weren't built with grand gestures, but with intentional attention. Some of the best leaders didn't speak the most, they listened the longest. Listening isn't weakness. It's not passivity. It's one of the most courageous and generous things you can do. Because when you listen, you set aside your ego, you pause your agenda, you make the moment about someone else. And that's hard to do in a world that rewards visibility over vulnerability. But the irony is, when you listen deeply, people are more drawn to you because they trust you, because they feel you're not just hearing them, you're honoring them. The truth is, people don't remember most of what you say, but they always remember how you made them feel. And being deeply heard, that's unforgettable. That's the kind of leadership that doesn't just motivate, it transforms. I once sat with a founder who built a wildly successful company. People always asked him about his strategies, his funding rounds, his vision, but he told me something I never forgot. He said, "My best ideas never came when I was talking. They came when I was listening to my team, to my customers, to my own restlessness." That stuck with me because it reminded me that success isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it comes in the stillness between words. When you practice the art of listening, you start to notice things. You notice what's not being said. You notice tone. You notice hesitation. You start reading people, not just hearing them. And when you do that, you lead with empathy. You make better decisions. You catch problems before they explode. You build trust before it's tested. Listening is what turns a conversation into a connection. It's what turns feedback into growth. It's what turns conflict into understanding. And it's what turns everyday people into exceptional leaders. Because anyone can talk, anyone can give instructions, but it takes something deeper to really tune in, to let someone else's voice carry weight in your world. And there's another layer to this. You also have to learn how to listen to yourself. Not just your loud thoughts, but your quiet truth. That gut feeling, that voice inside you that doesn't shout, it whispers. It's easy to ignore, it's easy to dismiss, but often it's the truest voice of all. The people who succeed long-term, who don't just achieve but stay aligned, are the ones who keep that inner channel open. They don't drown it out with noise. They protect their space. They make time for reflection. They listen inward as much as they listen outward. In a world obsessed with being heard, choose to be the one who listens. Choose to ask the deeper questions. Choose to stay a little longer in the silence. Because in that space, trust is built. Clarity is born. Relationships are strengthened. And leadership becomes real. So if you want to know whether you'll be successful, not just wealthy or well-known, but truly successful, ask yourself this. How well do I listen? Not just when it's convenient, not just when I agree, but when it's hard, when I'm tired, when I'm wrong. Can I still be present? Can I still be open? Because listening is not just a soft skill, it's a superpower, one that will set you apart, not by how loudly you speak, but by how deeply others feel heard when they're with you. And when you build that kind of presence, that kind of trust, people, they build with you. They believe in you. They build with you. They go the distance with you. And that is success in its highest form. You want to know something most people never tell you about success? It's not a straight line. It's not clean, it's not predictable, and it's definitely not quick. Success is messy. It's full of detours, setbacks, long stretches of uncertainty, and quiet seasons where it feels like nothing's happening. But the ones who eventually reach it, the ones who build something meaningful, something lasting, are the ones who keep going even when the momentum fades. There's this myth we're sold that successful people are always motivated, always inspired, always moving at lightning speed. But that's not how it works. Ask anyone who's ever built something worth building. There were days they wanted to quit. There were moments they felt invisible. There were stretches where it seemed like no one was noticing, no one was clapping, and no one was coming to rescue them. And still they kept going, because real success is not born in the spotlight. It's forged in the shadows. It's built in the quiet repetition of small, seemingly insignificant actions done with consistency, with heart, with integrity, long before the results show up. You see, everyone loves the story after it works. But what defines a successful person is what they do before it does, the ability to keep showing up day after day when no one's watching. That's the real secret. It's easy to stay motivated when things are exciting, when you're getting recognition, when the feedback loop is positive. But what happens when it isn't? What happens when the applause dies down, when progress slows, when the early excitement wears off? That's when the work actually begins. People who succeed long-term don't rely on hype. They rely on discipline. They rely on purpose. They rely on a deep inner commitment that says, even if it's hard today, I'm still going. That kind of resilience doesn't come from external rewards. It comes from within, from a reason that's bigger than comfort, bigger than ego, bigger than the fear of failure. One of the most underrated traits of successful people is endurance. Not the flashy kind, not the kind that looks heroic from the outside, the quiet kind, the kind that wakes up early when it's easier to sleep in, the kind that keeps writing when no one's reading, the kind that trains when no one's watching. It's that slow, steady rhythm of someone who's decided they are not giving up, even when progress is invisible. It's ironic, really. We tend to glorify speed. We chase hacks and shortcuts and 10x strategies, but true greatness is almost always a result of time, of compounding effort, of patience. Not the kind of patience that waits passively, but the kind that works faithfully, that keeps showing up to the process, trusting that the seeds planted today will bear fruit tomorrow, or next month, or next year, even if no one claps. I once heard someone say, consistency is more important than intensity. And that stayed with me, because most people can be intense for a moment. They can go all in for a week, maybe a month, but very few can be consistent for a year, or 5, or 10. That's where the real divide happens. That's where excellence is separated from enthusiasm. There's something deeply honorable about someone who doesn't quit, who doesn't let emotions dictate their commitment, who doesn't stop just because it got boring or uncomfortable or because the results didn't come fast enough. That kind of person, you can trust them. You can build with them. Because you know they're in it for the long haul, not just for the hype. And the truth is, most people quit too early, not because they're weak, but because we live in a culture that worships immediacy. We're addicted to quick wins. We celebrate overnight success stories without acknowledging the 10 years of obscurity that came before them. So when our journey takes longer than we thought, we assume something's wrong. We assume we missed our shot. But nothing's wrong. This is just the part of the story no one talks about. Every meaningful pursuit has a valley, a place between I started and I made it, a place where the initial spark has faded, but the results haven't yet arrived. And it's in that valley that most people turn back, not because they couldn't make it, but because they expected it to be faster, easier, clearer. But those who keep going, they discover something extraordinary. They grow, they deepen, they build grit, they become the kind of person who's ready for the success that's waiting on the other side. That's the part people don't see. Success isn't just what you achieve, it's who you become in the process. It's the strength you build when no one's watching, the character you develop when no one's rewarding you, the integrity you maintain when no one's holding you accountable. That's the real win. And ironically, that's what prepares you for the visible success when it comes. So if you're in a season right now where it feels like you're doing everything right but seeing very little in return, don't quit. If you're in that stretch of the journey where the feedback is quiet, the road is long, and the reward feels distant, don't back down. Keep going, keep building, keep becoming, because the world is full of talented people who gave up too soon, people who had potential but not patience, people who had passion but not persistence. But the ones who make it, the ones who lead, the ones who last, they're not the ones who never struggled. They're the ones who never stopped. Success doesn't show up for the person who works the hardest once. It shows up for the person who keeps working, keeps believing, keeps moving, even when nothing is guaranteed. That's what separates the dreamers from the doers. That's how you know someone is truly on the path to success. It's not their accolades, it's not their speed, it's their consistency, their quiet commitment to keep walking even when the road is long, even when it's lonely, even when it's hard. And that is how you know you'll be successful. Not because the world says so, but because you've decided you won't stop until it's real.